you want a quarter of your plate to be grains. And so they just made it a lot more simple so that you're not looking at servings and how much is a serving, and which was very complicated. Did anyone ever try to follow the old Canada's Food Guide?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, and how was that, Frank?
It's pretty good. I was telling Allison, I don't know if you heard, but uh, you actually taught the course at Etobicoke General, the nutrition course,
Right.
and it, like I said, I didn't use it at first, but I used it after. I still remember what I learned, and
Good.
it's been helpful for me.
Good. Good. I'm glad. I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Um, So basically, when we look at, the fruit and vegetables, so I forgot all of my cheat sheets in my room, so I'm just going to remember it off of the top of my head. So the things to remember is, first of all, when you're looking at fruits and vegetables, you really want to eat the rainbow, and you want to look at the flesh of the fruit or vegetable, not necessarily the skin color. So each color of fruit and vegetable has different vitamins and minerals. So if you're eating a variety of different colors of fruits and vegetables, then you should be getting all of the vitamins and minerals that you can get from fruits and vegetables. So I had a list. And Frank, you brought that up when I did the health and wellness course at Etobicoke. What we used to play a game where we would hand out cards that had different colors on them, and everyone had to list a fruit or vegetable of that color. So, can anyone tell me a purple fruit or vegetable?
Eggplant.
Oh, yeah, perfect. Anyone else?
Grapes.
Great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
purple grapes. Yeah, for sure.
Beets.
Oh, beets.
Beets.
Beets. Yeah, yeah. What about white?
Cauliflower.
Ginger.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't think about that one.
Mm.
Cauliflower.
Cauliflower,
That's in season right now.
even pears, like the inside of a pear is typically white, or most apples are white on the inside. Mushrooms are apparently incredibly good for you. And then orange is kind of cheating because orange we have sweet potato on the screen as well as carrots. Any other orange?
Mangoes.
Oh yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, that's perfect.
Everyone's thinking of orange.
So try and eat. Yes, but say that again.
Everyone was
Sorry.
thinking of oranges.
Okay. No one said it. The other thing which we talked about last week is that we want to make sure we eat the fruit instead of drinking the fruit juice. Just We talked a bit about how in a glass of orange juice, you're really getting the juice from about 3 oranges, but fruit has a lot of sugar in it. So you really want to have the fiber along with that sugar. So you don't get the fiber when you're drinking the juice. And it also doesn't fill you up. You can easily have 2 glasses of orange juice, which would be 6 oranges, but it's not like you're going to sit down and eat 6 oranges, or maybe, and some of you would. I know I would not. But yeah, you're going to consume a lot less sugar if you have the fiber with it in the fruit form. And if you're choosing canned fruits, choose fruits that are canned in water, not syrup, because the ones in the syrup they're going to have an extremely high sugar content. And then the fruits and vegetables are super good for you, and and they help prevent heart disease. There's studies done where it prevents certain forms of cancer. So they are really, really important for you. Any questions about fruits and vegetables? I can't see you if you're shaking your head.
I know for me, sometimes what comes up is that, it's expensive to buy fruits and vegetables that are fresh sometimes at the grocery store. Does anybody else find that? Especially this summer, that things have gone up so much. So, you know, the studies show that, you know, the bags of frozen fruits and vegetables, they're good for us too.
Mhm.
So if you see those, you know, buy them on sale. Like you can freeze them if you got a freezer at home, so that they can last over a longer period of time. And those are good for us too. So,
Yeah,
especially
and
winter time, you know, we can't always get all of them in Canada. So,
mhm.
you know,
And if you like going out like strawberry picking or blueberry picking or anything like that, when you're freezing them, just freeze them on a cookie sheet individually, because if you freeze them all together, all initially, they'll all stick together in a big clump. You'll have like a pound of strawberries stuck together. So just freeze them on a cookie sheet and then put them all in a bag. And once they're frozen, and then they won't stick together.
I did that for squash just a few weeks ago.
Oh, really? But like
Yeah.
butternut squash.
So I sliced up the squash, put them on a cookie sheet, froze them, and then threw them all in a freezer bag for the winter. I make nice squash soup, baked squash, whatever kind of squash you like.
That's delicious.
Mm.
Okay. And another problem sometimes is, how do we get all of our fruits and vegetables into our diet? And please feel free to add any suggestions. These are just some of the ones that I'm aware of. So, you know, adding vegetables to your pasta sauce. So if you're having pasta, you could add broccoli to the pasta, cauliflower to the pasta, tons of onions, bell peppers, those sorts of things, because then what it does is it decreases your grain intake and increases your vegetable intake. And then and because grains have eventually turned to, well, but especially the pasta will turn into sugar. So at least if you're filling yourself up on more vegetables, then that will help with the sugar content.
So carbs,
Um,
they turn into sugar.
Pardon me?
Carbs, they turn into sugar.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. Yeah, so that's the tricky thing. So I don't know, like, it was a big thing, you know, in the 80s and 90s. You would hear about athletes carb loading, because what they would do is they would need, like, for long distance runners or like hockey players or whatever, they would load up on carbohydrates so that when they would provide them with lots of sugar to burn when they're playing their sport. But those types of athletes are burning off their sugar, so they could load up on a lot of carbohydrates because they're going to burn them all off. And so that's when it comes in. So because carbohydrates, you know, they're going to turn into sugars, what you can do is, if you're worried about your sugar intake and not burning it off, you can also have your carbohydrates, like, you know, more so at breakfast and lunch, and a little bit less at dinner, and maybe none before bed, because then it's not turning into sugar while you're sleeping.
Right now, I'm just wondering, Frank, being diabetic, what do they advise you about carbs?
Yeah, we did learn that they get converted into sugar after, I think, they're in our system. Just try to avoid it. Sometimes even whole wheat, like bread or pasta, but just a little bit, like portion control with the carbs.
Yeah,
That's what I remember.
Do they encourage you to have like a balance, like also some protein, maybe with that carb?
Not too much. I didn't hear that when I went for diabetes, but when I took the course with Stephanie, she did teach us about protein, and having some protein or more protein in our diet, and it works well. So, sorry, I lost track.
That's okay.
Oh, you did a
Frank.
great job there. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, the next step would be to like load up your sandwiches with peppers, cucumbers, onions. That's another sneaky way to put vegetables into your diet, or to get them all in. When you're having cereal, you can add bananas, raisins, berries, anything to top up your cereal, just to get those fruits and vegetables in. Avocados are amazing, like in terms of avocados have a lot of healthy fat in them. And so you can squish them up and stick them on toast with a tomato as opposed to having something else like jam. Have a salad with your dinner. You can just add it on. Add peas to your rice. I know, in Jamaica, it's very common to have rice and peas, but it's not actually peas, it's beans. But I think in Trinidad, it might actually be, I don't know, in Trinidad, is it actually peas that they add?
Both.
Is it both?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Just like Allison had said, make vegetable soup in the winter and fall. That's a great way of getting, eating your squash or your carrot or whatever soup you're having. And then so one of the clerks at Etobicoke General, she did this, and it was tasted so good. She made hamburgers for everyone, and when I was eating it, there was like chunks of like broccoli and onion in it, and it was delicious. I was shocked that it was like a broccoli meat hamburger, and it was so good. So that's another sneaky way of getting vegetables into your diet. And if you're having an omelet, you can stick lots of vegetables in there. Baked potato, you can load it up with lots of things as well. Does anyone else have any ideas that they want to share of how to get vegetables into their diet?
Laura.
I think if I can continue the tradition I grew up with, which is just having a little vegetable garden where my parents' house. Looking at this list, I realized how much we saved because my parents plant such a huge garden. But I think even as a way to kind of learn a skill for vegetable gardening, whatever you get is a blessing. It doesn't have to be necessarily big. It also depends on where you live. So I was wondering if, I don't know, maybe there could, I don't know, just this idea for like community vegetable garden or something, or Osler-based vegetable garden for the nutrition course. And what I mean by community-based is that I attended CMHA in Aurora, and they had a plot of land in Aurora that was from the city, I believe, designating to different agencies to have their vegetable gardening. So CMHA had a gardening group, and they teach you all that, and then you're actually putting it into practice on the land. I don't know what the land situation is on Osler Hospital, but if I could just inherit the gene for good gardening, I think that would be a way to get it into my system routinely too, as I get older.
That's a great idea. I love that they did that. And some people even have little garden, herb gardens at home.
Yeah.
You can buy like a little
Like a planter.
basket with just different types of lettuce.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I'm glad you brought it up, Laura, because there was a study done not too long ago. I heard the person who conducted the study talk on an interview on CBC radio, and they were talking about how there was a significant mood increase with people who, I think overall, people who garden had an overall increase in their mood. So not only do you get all these healthy foods from the garden, but it also, just the act of gardening itself is significant in increasing mood overall.
What do you mean? Mood, you said?
Mood, yeah. So,
Good or bad?
Good. So people who garden are generally happier people.
I don't know about that. My parents are rough with me.
I think it depends if you're always the one watering the garden or if you're collecting from it.
Because like Laura said, my father, he's a big gardener.
Yeah.
And he's got a big garden too. So I don't know about that statement.
I'll have to dig up the study. Maybe your father is the exception.
Ask him why he keeps doing it.
Okay, I'll ask.
Or maybe if you see him not garden one year, maybe he will be in a bad mood all year.
Oh, you're scaring me now.
No.
It can't get worse than this. I don't want it to get worse than this.
So maybe it does help him in some ways.
Maybe, yeah, maybe this is the good side of him.
Maybe. Oh, funny. So protein. So like Frank was saying, yeah, we try to have proteins with every meal, and one of the reasons is that proteins make you feel full. So if you're looking at controlling your weight, try to have protein at every meal or in every snack, because that's what's going to make you feel full. So I don't know if we mentioned this last week, but I think we talked about yogurt a little bit. But if you look at the low-fat yogurt, what happens is it's filled with sugar and you end up eating a lot of it. Where if you have like a full-fat yogurt and, with lots of protein like the Greek yogurt, you're not going to have as much because it's going to make you feel more full. In terms of B12, you need animal products, and you need to consume animal products, whether it be eggs or meat, in order to get your B12. I believe you can get it from kelp, like seaweed has very small amounts of B12, but really to get a significant amount of B12, you really need to get it from an animal. Sorry, was someone going to say something?
Some people that maybe have difficulties with B12, like they're not able to get enough. They may have to take a supplement, or the doctor may have to give them B12 injection.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry, go ahead, Laura.
B12. So then it's vitamin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I was just reflecting, there was a time when I was on Dr. Bernstein program, and they said that they inject you with B6 and B12. So I'm wondering, but like you had to give up a lot of foods. So the foods that you get B12 from, they're good they're good sources, obviously, of that vitamin.
Right.
So I guess an injection would be if you're not getting enough, or I think.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, and Laura, you know what, I've heard that before, is that on that particular diet they would give injections of the B vitamins, and I think you're right. I think it was a B12 and B6.
Yeah.
But yeah, they help with B vitamins in general help with brain function. They help with metabolizing in our cells. So our body is all made up of cells, so it helps with converting materials from different sources into something else that our body uses.
So a large serving of animal products is actually not that bad then, I guess. I mean, if it's B12.
Right, and basically what you want is you want a quarter of your diet to be protein.
Okay.
And again, that can include fish, peanut butter, eggs, beans, hummus, lentils, nuts, seeds. It can include all of those things.
Some of the cereals are fortified with it. Tofu, low-fat milk, low-fat yogurt, Swiss cheese, whey powder, soy milk. I'm just looking at some of the top foods. One of the best things that has a lot of vitamins are sweet potatoes.
Yeah, and the sweet potato, I saw a recipe where you can eat a sweet potato exactly like you would a regular baked Yukon potato, where you just bake it and then you slice it in half and fill it with like sour cream or what have you, salt and pepper.
They've got oysters, octopus, pork, lamb, clams, a lot of different fish, sardines. The number one thing, 1,648% of your vitamin B12 from clams. Who would have
Right.
known? Wow. And sardines are pretty good, 150%. So if anybody's a fish lover, a lot of things with fish.
Does anyone here eat sardines?
I do.
You do?
Yeah.
Sardine sandwich on toast.
Yeah, with tomatoes and onions and
Yes.
Yeah.
My dad does that too. Okay,
it's not bad.
not bad.
Yeah.
Well, it must be pretty good if you're eating it. Okay, grains. So again, so you want half your plate fruits and vegetables, a quarter of your plate proteins, and a quarter of your plate in grains. So basically what you want to do is you want to choose whole grains over white processed flours. You want to look for words like 100% whole wheat on the package. Sometimes it can be really deceiving. It's really good for your digestion, and it's a good source of iron, B vitamins, and vitamin E as well. Does anyone have whole grain pasta or whole wheat bread?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did anyone find it, if they did switch over, did you find it difficult to switch over from like white bread and white pasta to whole wheat bread and whole wheat pasta?
I did, Stephanie, and it wasn't just me; it was the whole family who switched over to like more whole wheat stuff.
Yeah.
And eventually, you know what happens? You like the whole wheat after, and if you had to go back to the plain one, you would taste the difference.
Yeah.
You get used to it, because for me, it's been years now since we switched to like more whole wheat. Some things are still regular, or if there's none available at the store, we just get the regular one, whatever. But like 90% of the time, it's whole wheat, whole wheat.
Yeah.
Even pizza dough.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it tastes great. Some
Yeah.
people might say, "Oh, whole wheat pizza." No, the way we make it is amazing. I help make it too. So,
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think I agree with you. It takes a while. We just switched over a couple of years ago from white rice to brown rice. Yeah, my husband was convinced he would never, ever, ever, ever eat brown rice. But now that's all we have. It's you get used to it for sure.
yeah.
Okay. So that was kind of the Canada's food guide. So it's one thing to kind of know what to eat, but eating behaviors are incredibly fascinating. And so, for example, and again, I have this in my room, so I'm going to remember off the top of my head. So at one point they did like this chicken wing experiment. So they had a bunch of people sitting around a table at a restaurant, and they would have, in one group, they would have the waitress come up and remove the old chicken bones. And in the other group, they kept the chicken bones on the table. So basically what happened is the people who had the chicken bones removed, they ended up eating an enormous amount more than the people who had the chicken bones on the table. And part of that is because they could see how much they've eaten. Like if you have a big pile of 50 chicken bones in front of you, that's kind of your cue to stop eating. But the people who didn't have the chicken bones in front of them, they had no cue of how much they had eaten. So they just kept eating and eating and eating and eating. And so one of the things you want to look at are, what are some of those behavioral cues that we're so, susceptible to? So things like, what is the size of your plate? People who have large plates will eat large amounts because you're going to eat what's on your plate. People who have smaller plates are going to eat smaller amounts because they're going to eat what's on their plate. Did those things make sense to you?
Yes.
Yeah. things you want to do, you want to assess how hungry you are before you eat. And the other thing is when you want to stop eating when you're about 80% full. Um, and then you want to avoid eating late at night. And that's kind of what happens when, if that food you're going to eat right before bed, that you won't have time to burn those calories off before you go to bed. So you want to kind of stop eating after dinner, and then you will burn off those calories from dinner, and it's not going to sit there all night turning into sugar and then turning into fat because it's not being burned off. And then eat foods that will make you feel full, like protein. Protein will make you feel full, so you're not going to eat as much.
I think sometimes we get into behaviors like, you go to the movie and you always have to have popcorn, or we sit in front of the TV and we have to have something to eat. So those kind of behaviors, if we start to notice that, I'm eating more like than I was before, or I'm putting on weight, or every time I sit in front of the TV, I seem to be wanting something to eat. Yeah, Laura.
I went through a period where I was growing up as an emotional eater,
Right.
eating as coping, and doesn't matter if it's healthy or not, just eating as coping skills. And it's hard to break that. That's the hardest to break, for whatever reason, whether it's a diet or whether it's just something else you're working on, but to separate eating as a coping skill, because it could go on with anything, not just snack foods, but even portions and dinner, or a double sandwich and lunch.
Yeah.
Um,
So what helped you?
you don't even know how hungry you are. Just automatically, you're always reaching for something if you're mad, or you go out and you stop somewhere and get it. Yeah,
Yeah. Did
eating as a
something
coping
help, Laura?
skill.
What kind of coping skill did you replace that with?
Honestly, I don't know if it's a coping skill, but I had to just improve the way I communicate with others.
Oh,
Because if I was eating due to frustration or due to not speaking up, or if I was eating as kind of a being upset of a conversation that happened, um, coping skills now, I guess, music. I listen to a lot of music if I'm upset instead of going for food. Music. I got into coloring, the mandalas and therapeutic coloring. But I'd say if I need a quick fix coping skill, it would be music. Even just sitting at home turning on the radio.
that's a
Yeah.
lot of great ideas.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard, but my family has come a long way in terms of communication, so I have to give them credit for it.
Nice.
Laura, that's such an excellent point, and that's kind of looking at, so before you eat something, you kind of want to say, okay, am I really hungry? And if you're hungry, then yes, go ahead and eat. But you also want to ask yourself, okay, if you're not really that hungry, then why are you eating? What is it
Yeah.
that's really bothering you? What are you getting from food that's going to make you feel better? Why are you eating? Are you bored?
Sorry, just one more thing to add.
Yeah, of course.
I noticed that when I'm upset, I need to keep my hands occupied. So when I started doing some crafting things, I have that outlet for my hands as opposed to going for food. Not only just getting rid of the desire for food or the food as emotional eating, but the real thing that I noticed by chance was my hands had to keep busy. So I just grab a cloth and dust. But yeah, there's like you were saying, Allison, there's a kind of like a science behind people eating, but it's something that can definitely be controlled if you know why you do it, I think, and if you're willing
Right.
enough to make the change.
Yeah, that's right. But knowing what it is. So, good for you for recognizing what it was that, why you were eating, like that emotional hunger. And because for each of us, it could be something different, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of us You know, you see it on movies too. So there's a breakup. What do people go to? Cup of ice
Ice cream.
Yeah, yeah. So it's common for us to
Yeah.
do those kind of things. But once we're aware and we want to make those changes, then we have the ability to.
Mhm. Yeah, and then some of the other eating behavior things or behaviors that affect our eating and our appetite is sleep. You wouldn't think the two are connected, but they really are quite connected, especially through hormones. Like sleep affects your cortisol levels, and it also affects something called ghrelin, and I don't know if I'm saying it right. But basically, that's kind of one of your hunger signals. So when people don't sleep well, they have a tendency to be hungrier. They eat more when they're not sleeping well. Does that resonate with anyone? Does anyone notice that?
Yes, with me, Stephanie.
Yeah, you notice that if you're not sleeping well, that you'll eat more.
Yeah, yeah. It just not getting a good night's sleep offsets your balance during the day, and I noticed that, and for me that it has affected me that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
It's
so,
not uncommon for people who work night shift too.
Mhm.
That you know, they're tired. So what's the first thing we reach for when we're really tired? Kind of like the commercial, right? I'm hangry. I go for the chocolate bar.
Coffee and chocolate.
Yes, coffee and chocolate.
yeah. Yeah, and sometimes yes, yeah, and I was thinking the same thing, Allison, in terms of night shift. What also happens is exactly that. You eat to stay awake sometimes because you figure if you're eating, you're not going to be sleeping. So kind of, and like what Laura was saying is, you want to be mindful of your eating. So be aware of the influences that cause you to eat, and that also includes sounds, sights, and smells. For anyone who goes to, like, say, even the Canadian National Exhibition every year, well, except for this year, like you walk into the food building and there's the sound of the fryers and the sight of all the food and all the stands and the smells of like Tiny Tom's donuts. Does anyone find that they're influenced by these things?
Yeah, I am. I find I like to eat, like Laura was saying, even when I'm emotional. But yeah, like going to the CNE, you're right. The sights, the smells, the sounds, everything
Mm-hmm.
kind
Some
of
people
triggers
just go
hunger.
there to try those new things out.
Sorry?
I said some people go every year just to try the new
Yeah.
new
Yeah.
thing out that year. What was it? I don't know. The
Was it
Corona
the chocolate covered or the Mars bar, the fried Mars
fried
bar?
Mars bar.
Yeah, Tiny Tim's donuts and my favorite was the onion, the blooming onion.
Oh.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I find that what gets me sometimes is the smell of bacon. He goes, so you know what? You can be incredibly full, but if you smell bacon, it makes you want bacon. The other thing is to try not to supersize just because someone asks you. Does anyone go through the drive-through and everyone just says, "Oh, do you want to supersize that, or do you want a hash brown with that?" Or and do any of you say yes? And does anyone ever say no?
They're very smart about it at the drive-through. I noticed I would go when McDonald's had their free coffee, so I'd order a free coffee, and they say, "Oh, do you want to buy a muffin with that, or a chocolate laden whatever with that?" And you're like, "Okay."
Yeah, it's true. Just the power of suggestion. And again, if you supersize something or if you get that muffin, you're going to eat that muffin and you're going to eat all of those French fries because people have a tendency to eat what's in front of them because you know what, a lot of people will eat mindlessly, so they're not going to stop when they're full. They're going to stop when they see that the container is empty. Yeah. And then how accessible is your food? So and back to that, the supersize. So that's another point I wanted to make is, so if you have a large container, you're going to eat more. So just like the plate size, where if you're eating out of a smaller container, you're not going to eat as much. That's another study that was done when they look at whether it be bags of chips or French fry cartons. I think the study I was reading was the one based on potato chips. And if you have a bigger bag, you're going to eat more. If you have a smaller bag, you're going to eat less.
Hey, Stephanie, can I say something?
Yes.
They try to trick you at the buffets. I remember years ago, the buffets had bigger plates, but then they put smaller plates so that you would eat less. And another trick that they did to make you eat less at the buffet was they used the MSG. I think that was common in like Mandarin. And then I think they got busted for it or something like that. And then, you know what I just heard recently is that they put the MSG in the water. And they're always asking you, do you want more water? Do you want more water? They just come around and they fill up your glass all the time. And I never picked up on it. I said, why am I so full when I haven't eaten that much at the Mandarin? Why do I feel so bloated? And it was because of that. So they tried to trick you too, eh?
Oh, I haven't heard that before.
Yeah, I know. I just heard the water part maybe 2-3 months ago. And I was going to the Mandarin for years. And I never knew.
Hmm.
I don't mean that just to put down the Mandarin because I'm still gonna go, but I'm just gonna watch my water intake.
That's right. That's
right. It's still an excellent restaurant to go. So don't be fooled, people. Just watch the water. That's all. No disrespect to them, but just watching out for myself. That's all, and you guys too.
Perfect. Thanks, Frank.
Yeah.
And then how accessible is your food? So do you have a cookie jar on your kitchen counter so that every time you walk through the kitchen, it's like they're glaring you in the face and so you grab the cookie? They also found this for people who have candy dishes on their desks, or they found that people will eat less depending on how far away the candy dish is. So the further the candy dish is away, if you actually have to get up from your desk to walk to the candy dish, you're not going to have as much candy as if the candy dish is actually sitting on your desk. So it's kind
right
of
in front of you.
Sorry, Allison. What were you going to say?
And right in front of you.
Yeah.
You can reach for it. But I think, Laura, you had your hand up.
No, I was just going to say, Frank makes such a good point about like the marketing the business and the marketing behind the whole way the restaurant presents their product, I guess. And you would think that if you could tune into it, you might not fall for it. But sometimes it's so hard. You know what they're doing, and you keep going back and back because you just gotta know. You just gotta eat. You just gotta cope. But yeah, Frank makes a good point about how they can just the whole business behind creating cravings and more and refills.
Oh, we're so manipulated by food. It's true. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Frank.
And then, so this is just the last slide because I'm looking forward to seeing you again because all I see is my slides. So these are just some of the questions to kind of ask yourself if you want to go through them. So when you're eating, so do you stop eating when you are full? Like say when, like Allison said, if you're in the movie theater and you have your popcorn with you, will you continue eating popcorn, or will you like check in every 5-10 minutes and say maybe I'm feeling a little bit full and I should stop? Do you eat when you're bored, stressed, anxious, sad, or angry? Kind of like Laura had said, sometimes when we experience certain emotions that we immediately go to food as a comfort. Do you pick at your food? Do you taste every bite that you eat? Like when you're eating your popcorn in the movie theater, do you take the time to kind of savor every mouthful of popcorn? Do you eat one kernel at a time, or do you eat a handful at a time? Are you really tasting what you're actually putting in your mouth, or is it just the action of eating? And when you're eating, do you think about how you're nourishing your body, or are you just thinking not thinking about what you're putting in? It's just the action of eating and getting that sugar or carbohydrate, which is typically what we have a tendency to eat when we're eating mindlessly. Do you judge yourself when you overeat? This is a big one, because does anyone, when you overeat, does anyone here ever put themselves down afterwards?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and you know what? And what happens when you put yourself down?
You want to eat more after.
Eat more,
Yeah, yeah, it's so true. It's such a vicious cycle. You, as soon as you overeat and you start judging yourself and saying those negative things to yourself or calling yourself names, whatever it is, it makes you want to eat more, because it makes you feel bad about yourself. So the best thing to do is to try not to judge yourself, but to try and describe the behavior as opposed to adding a judgment to it. So if you overeat, say, instead of calling yourself a name or saying, oh, I'm this or I'm that, you can say, oh, I ate 2 cups of this. And, you know, and then there's not a judgment to it. It's just an acknowledgement that this is what you ate and this is what you can do in the future. But as soon as you judge yourself and start putting yourself down, exactly, you're going to feel worse. So just acknowledge that this is the behavior that happened, and then that allows you to move forward. Is there any questions about that, or does that make sense? That one takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of practice not to judge yourself. Do you multitask when you're eating? So are you eating when you're driving? Are you eating when you're watching TV? Are you eating while watching movies? You know, so that's a big thing, because as soon as you're not focused on your eating, you might have the tendency to overeat, because you're not paying attention to how much is coming into your body. Do you eat everything on your plate? Do you eat slowly and chew every bite? This is about the savoring part of it. And then do you recognize when you're zoned out while you're eating? Are there any comments about that or any of those?
I just have one question.
Of course.
What brand of whole wheat rice do you guys eat?
Say that again, Narveen.
What brand of whole wheat rice do you eat?
Oh.
I eat basmati, but I'm not sure it's whole wheat. They recommended I eat basmati rice.
You know what? I actually don't know what brand of brown rice I eat. I would have to, I can't even think about what the package looks like. I know when we were trying to transition over, we kind of went from white, and then we mixed the white rice with the wild rice, and then we started mixing the wild rice with the the brown rice, and now it's all brown rice. It was a big slow transition for my husband because he loves white rice. So yeah, so it was a big transition for us over a long period of time. But yeah, honestly, I don't know what brand we buy.
What
Yes,
what grocery do you go to?
Pardon me?
What grocery do you go to?
It depends. Sometimes like Foodland, sometimes theirs.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, Narveen, I think they're changing the name now, but Uncle Ben's is like the best rice you can get.
Oh, they're
Oh, yeah.
changing the name.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Do you know why?
Why they're changing the name?
Yeah.
Racial issues.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, that's okay, but it's still great rice. I mean, I think it's the best to buy.
I know they sell the Uncle Ben rice in the small packets, but do they sell them in the big bags?
I'm not really too sure. I think they do, but I'm not 100% sure.
I think they do, Narveen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I can't remember if I actually had whole wheat rice. That's why I'm just wondering. Like,
I noticed with the whole wheat, you just have to add a little bit more water.
oh yeah.
But the instructions are on the package anyways, but that's what I noticed.
Okay.
Yeah, and try it like what Stephanie said, Narveen, a little bit at a time. Then you'll get more used to it's a different texture and a little different flavoring.
Okay.
Lee, do you have any questions?
Mm. I had one. I was waiting till the end for it. Give me a second. Let me try and remember it.
Okay.
Sometimes just talking about eating can make us hungry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like Noblat, he's been eating.
Oh.
Stephanie, is there a way we can get a copy of the eating assessment? It's a mindful eating assessment question.
Oh yeah, for sure. I took it from well, I've modified it a little bit, but yeah, I have it. I can send it.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting reflection.
Hmm. It is an interesting reflection, 100%. Yeah, and it makes. And I also read somewhere once where, in terms of mindful eating, so if you kind of pay attention to what your mood is before you eat and how hungry you are, and then pay attention to how your mood is after you eat and how hungry you are, and write down what you're eating. And so I had done that last year sometime. I did that. And what I noticed is that when I eat sugar, I get really angry. So I'm incredibly irritable when I have high amounts of sugar. I get so irritable. And that's what I noticed. And it's not till I'm blushing. And then it's not till I did that assessment that I kind of did that I'm like, hey, how come every time I'm getting irritable, it's right after I've had like something that has a lot of sugar in it.
Yeah.
And it's only because I did that little assessment that I was able to kind of recognize that. So now every time I go to eat something with a lot of sugar in it, I kind of think of the consequences. It's like, oh, this is going to make me feel awful, and I'm going to be irritable if I eat this. So, or I'll just have less of it.
Okay, so I remember my question now. Usually I eat until I get to about 2,000 sodium level. Like, you know how on every product they tell you how much sodium is in that product.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really look at the sugar or any of those ones, but for the sodium, once I eat to about 2,000, I get full for the whole day. Like I don't know if anyone else follows the sodium levels on their food.
Have you ever been told to do that, Lee? Like, has your doctor said to watch your sodium level?
No.
No?
That's the only part of the food I really look at when I eat.
Okay.
How much sodium is in this much amount of food.
Do you find when you're eating that amount of